Hey friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff. If you're a sublimation crafter who wants to put images on cotton or dark fabrics, you may be looking at either a DTF direct-to-film printer or a white toner printer. There are pros and cons to both, so to start I am going to link down in the description a video where I compared the two so you can see the main differences between DTF printing and white toner printing. I have already done a bunch of videos about DTF printing, and so now we're going to dive a little bit more into white toner printing. I do have a video all about what white toner printing is, and in this video we're going to be going into the Crio printer specifically and learning how to use it. I do want to start out by saying that Crio sometimes calls their white toner printer a powderless DTF printer, and that's because you are using film. You are printing direct to film. Regular DTF printing involves a powdering and curing process, whereas white toner printing doesn't have that, which might make it a better solution for a lot of people. So what is the Crio white toner printer? This printer is designed for small businesses and maybe at-home crafters who have a decent sized budget, but it basically allows you to print images that you can then transfer to all sorts of substrates. So in addition to being able to transfer them onto dark or cotton substrates, you can also use them on things like coffee mugs and tumblers. You can make temporary tattoos, you can put them on Mylar balloons. There really is like a huge range of projects that you can make with a white toner printer. A Crio printer is definitely an investment. Around $6,795. This is not a printer for everyone, and I totally understand that. But if you are a small sublimation business that wants to grow, or maybe you want to get a DTF printer but you're like really scared because of all the maintenance and safety issues, a white toner printer could be a great option for you. Not to mention, you can do a lot more with a white toner printer than you can with a DTF printer. A DTF printer is generally reserved for garments and other soft textiles. So you can make t-shirts and tote bags and pillowcases. I mean, it's like you can make a decent number of things, but with a white toner printer, you can make so much more. Now you guys know that generally I like to get something and use it before I make a video about it so I can actually speak confidently about it. So I don't have a setup video for this particular printer. Your printer will most likely be delivered on a pallet. So it was delivered to my house on a pallet, and that's because they need to keep the printer upright, and sometimes the shipping services will tip them on their side and they really need to stay upright. I have a very tricky driveway, but we were able to do it, and then we had to use a big dolly to sort of drag it up the stairs. It's quite larger than a normal printer. And then when you get your printer, you're going to want to have somebody help you unbox it and get it on a table. It's quite heavy at 81 pounds, so you are going to need somebody to help you out. The setup for this printer was extremely easy, and it comes with a little tablet that walks you through the process, but basically you just have to shake and put in the toner cartridges. Honestly, it took me very little time to set up and I was ready to roll. Before we get into actually using the machine, let me just talk about a few other features here. The first is that it prints up to 11 by 17. It can take smaller paper, but when you're making transfers for things like t-shirts, it's really nice to have that big printing area so you can make big, vivid transfers. The Crio prints in 4 colors, but it isn't the normal CMYK that you see in most printers. Instead, it prints in CMYW, which is cyan, yellow, magenta, and white. Black is made by a combination of the other colors. I will say that the blacks from a white toner printer are not quite as deep and black as the blacks from a DTF printer. However, that might be one of those trade-offs that you have for not having all of the maintenance and mess that you would have with the DTF printer. Then let's talk about computers and software. So one of the biggest cons for basically all of these large printers, including DTF printers, is that they really only work with a PC. And I have been a Mac girl for most of my life. So I did have to get myself a PC to be able to use this printer. And that was fine. I went to Best Buy and I actually went to their open box section and just picked out basically the cheapest printer that kind of hit all of the things I needed. I think I paid a little over $300. So that is something that you may have to add to the cost of the printer if you're going to go this direction. Then once you have your PC, you're going to be using their software, which is called CAD-Link Digital Factory. It's fairly easy to use and it has a lot of options. I will go ahead and show it to you in this video. It's not a design program though. So while it has some elements that can make your designs better for this particular type of printing, it's not a place where you're going to go in and do a bunch of designs. So you are going to either need to buy your designs elsewhere or you're going to need to create them in a different program. Then once you've created your file and sent it to the printer, how fast is it? The answer is really fast, just a couple of seconds to print. So if you've ever looked at a DTF printer printing, that is generally pretty darn slow, especially for the models that are designed for craft rooms. And so this is very, very fast. And when it comes out of the printer, it's completely dry to the touch. And that's because we're using toner, which is a powder, instead of ink, which is wet. Then once we have our print, how do we apply it to a garment or other blank? And that is going to be using a heat press. And I highly recommend having a traditional type heat press as opposed to a handheld press. And that's because it really needs firm, even pressure to do the marrying process, which I will talk about here in a little bit. It's basically how we add the adhesive to the back of the white toner transfer print. But I have found that I have tried to do it with a handheld press and it just doesn't work very well. And so you are going to want a bigger traditional heat press that you can adjust the pressure on. And then finally, how much maintenance does this printer need? It needs none. No maintenance, maybe dust it every once in a while. This is one of my absolute favorite things about a white toner printer, and that is that because we are using powder instead of wet ink, it doesn't clog. I could turn that printer off and not use it for 6 months, turn it on and have a beautiful print in just a few minutes. This is one of the biggest benefits, I think, of white toner printing over DTF printing that requires a lot of maintenance, daily maintenance every other day. So if you are looking for something that doesn't require you to print all the time, I do feel like a white toner printer is going to be the better choice. All right, let's go ahead and make a project. We are moving into the holiday season, so I am making myself a Christmas shirt, but of course you can make whatever you would like. And I'm using a super soft Bella Canvas long sleeve tee here. If you watched my What's Trending on Etsy video recently, you'll know that neutrals are super hot right now. So I picked up this sort of vintagey white, off-white color, and I'm really excited to use it today. I think it's gonna be really cute. Before I got this printer, my options for decorating on Bella Canvas tees was a little bit more limited. I could use HTV, which I have done a lot, or I could buy DTF prints, which I have also done a lot. And it really has expanded the number and types of t-shirts and other garments I can make. I say this in all my videos where I mention Bella Canvas, but they have an amazing program called their Makers Account, and it allows you to buy their garments at wholesale pricing without a reseller license. It is awesome, and it's free to sign up. So I will go ahead and link that down in the description below. It's how I buy all of my Bella Canvas tees, and I think it's just a really great setup for anybody who wants to get their Bella Canvas tees at a lower price. Now let's talk a little bit about what I have here on my desk. So I'm gonna move this shirt to the side, and then I just have a few other things that we're going to need for this project. So there are quite a few papers and things here, so let's go through all of them. The first one here is a clear film, and this is actually what we are going to print on. This clear film has two sides. It has a shiny side and a dull side. I think it's pretty easy to tell them apart, but if you're having trouble, you can sort of scratch the corner and you can sort of scratch off that sort of matte coating so you can make sure that you're printing on the matte side. We're gonna call this our A sheet or our A foil. Then we have our B sheet, and it looks like just a white piece of paper on one side. It is marked on the other side, and this is our B sheet, and this is actually the adhesive that we're going to use. So we are going to use the heat press to add this adhesive to our white toner print. Then I just have a large piece of parchment paper, and then finally I have this sheet which came with my printer, and this is a T-seal sheet. It's sort of smooth on one side, and this side is kind of rubbery. So we're going to basically finish our press with this sheet, and it's going to take it from a very shiny look to looking like it is actually part of the garment. The other thing I have here is a paper trimmer. You can also use scissors or whatever you'd like. I just find a paper trimmer works really well. This will help us cut down our sheet before we press it. Here we are in Digital Factory. Over here on the right will be where your image shows up when we upload it. There are some settings down here at the bottom. The most important ones you need to look at to begin with are the size. So again, I'm using 11 by 17, and your media type. I'm using Forever Laser Dark, which works really well with a whole bunch of different garment and other soft blanks. All right, now we can upload our file. So I'm going to go to this plus sign, and I'm going to choose my file. I did get this file on Etsy. I will link it down below in the description. And it should automatically bring it in reversed. Now I'd like to make this a little bit bigger, so I'm going to change it to be 10.5 inches wide because I want a really big image on the front of my shirt. Then I can center it horizontally on my page using the align tools at the top. And that's basically it. I can click on my image here, and I can click print job, and it will print. All right, we have our white toner print. I didn't speed that video up at all. That is truly how fast it prints. And I mean, honestly, it's amazing how quickly it goes. So now we need to add the adhesive to the back of our print. So the back of our print right now is just toner. There's no actual adhesive. So we need to add that B sheet to this A film. Again, I'm using that Forever Laser Dark type of material here. So if you are using a different material, you will want to follow the manufacturer's instructions. So what I'm doing here is just for this particular material. All right, the first thing I'm gonna do here is trim off some excess film that I have at the top. As you're working, you may want to fill this with other smaller designs that you can use in other ways. Just for the point of this project, I'm just using this single sheet, but I do feel like maximizing your film, because it isn't cheap, is the best way to help keep your costs under control when doing white toner printing. So I'm going to cut just this top piece of film off here. Then we want to cut our B sheet to be slightly smaller than our A sheet. And that is because the B sheet itself is adhesive, and you don't want to get adhesive onto your heat press. Now, it's very hard to see in the overhead, but the B sheet is actually like 1/4 of an inch smaller than the film, which means that you don't generally need to trim it off the sides, but I am going to trim it off the top here. So I'm going to center my design here, just like this. And then I'm just going to trim that B sheet. I kind of trim this really close here. So I'm just going to trim the B sheet here so that I can center it. I'm going to use this as a guide. Let's see, right there. And then I'm going to pull this off. And I'm just going to scoot it down just a little bit. And I'm going to trim this off. This you can reuse. So I have a bunch of these scraps, and when I'm doing smaller projects, I'll grab a scrap instead of a whole sheet. So definitely keep this in your desk drawer or wherever you're going to store it, so that you can use it later. All right, I don't know if I could have cut it any closer, but my bottom of my hot cocoa here and the top of the North Pole are both on top of this adhesive sheet. So I think we're going to be okay. My film goes over the edge of the white adhesive sheet on all sides, so that I'm not going to get any of that adhesive on my heat press. I've set my heat press to 300 degrees for 90 seconds. If you have an image that has a lot of white, or like just a lot of image, you may want to increase that to 120 seconds, but I think we're going to be okay with 90 seconds for this one. You'll also want to set it to medium pressure. Then I'm going to pull out my heat press here. I'm going to place this on the mat here, just like this. You want the film on the bottom and then the adhesive sheet on the top facing down. Then another little trick I have here is to actually fold the corner. If your image is all the way to the corner, you don't want to do this, but this is basically going to give us a little tab so that when this comes out of the heat press, we are immediately going to pull this little tab and we're going to peel back the adhesive. The longer you let it wait, the higher chance you have that the adhesive is not going to stick to that toner. Basically, it's going to beep, I'm going to pull it out, I'm going to grab my little tab, and I'm going to peel it back. You want to try and do it in a nice even swoop. I'm actually going to stand up to do it because I think that will be easier. This is quite a large image. It's not as easy to do it with a large image, but we're going to give it our best shot. But we want to make sure to do it while it's still hot, and that's because that is how that adhesive is going to stick to the toner. All right, it's beeping. Pull it out here. And then again, it's really hot, but you can grab that little tab, and then you just want to peel it back, just like that. So it does look like I lost a few small pieces here, but honestly, it's kind of a distressed image, so I don't mind. But this can happen, and it's one of those things, the more intricate your image, the more likely you are to have some of these little pieces that don't connect. Next time, I might increase the press time to 120 seconds to see if I can actually make it so that doesn't happen. Now we have our transfer with the adhesive attached to the back. And before we apply it to the garment, there is one step we need to do, which is basically to cut off this sort of white line. It sort of creates a white line when you have the adhesive on there. So I'm just going to grab my scissors here and kind of cut. It does not have to be equal. It's not going to show up. We'll cut down this side. I always forget and never leave myself quite enough room. It's just something I need to get better at. All right. All right, now we're ready to press this on a shirt. So I'm going to grab my shirt here, and I've reset my heat press to 315 degrees for 30 seconds. It can vary between 300 and 330 or so, but I found that 315 works pretty good for just a basic cotton t-shirt. So I need to stand up again here. We will put this on our heat press here. Feel like it's going to be straight. Please be straight. Okay. I'm gonna pre-press my shirt for 15 seconds just to remove any moisture and give us a nice flat pressing surface. All right, so now we have our nice flat pressing surface, and we can add our image. So I'll make sure that it's centered. Then I'm gonna add a piece of parchment paper over the top. I'm gonna press this at medium to firm pressure for 30 seconds. When it comes out, instead of sort of ripping that off, we need to let the garment cool entirely. So I'm going to shake it around a little bit, get it to cool off, and then we can peel back that carrier sheet. All right, we can then peel this back in one smooth fluid motion. That went really nicely. Now, I don't know if you can see, I hope you can see in the overhead, this is extremely shiny. It's definitely not the look that you might want to be going for, and that's where that T-seal sheet comes in. So I'm going to keep my heat press set at 315, and I'm going to press it with the T-seal sheet on top for 20 seconds or so, and then when I peel it back, that shine will be completely gone and it will really look like it's much more part of the garment. All right, I have my T-seal sheet, and I'm going to place it with the rubbery side down on top of this. I'm going to press it for just 20 seconds or so. All right, and then when I pull it out and I peel this back, it looks so good. You can see here that it is no longer shiny. It really does look like it's more one with the fabric. You can feel it a little bit, but honestly, this is one of the absolute thinnest feeling transfers out there. It is really nice to the touch. It feels a little bit like a screen print. It's not totally flat like sublimation, but honestly, it's one of the best out there, and I really like how it feels. So the question you might be asking is, how is this gonna wash? Is this just going to get in the washer and then just sort of peel up like, you know, a bad HTV? And when it's applied correctly, this should wear similarly to a screen print, which is like my gold standard for how things should wear when it comes to garment decoration. So instead of peeling up like you might have with HTV, this might start to sort of like break apart and soften a little bit over time. I mean, it takes a long time to get to that point, but it's gonna wear much more like a screen transfer than it is like a vinyl. All right, so that's my video on how to use the Crio white toner printer. I know it's not a printer for everyone, but I do have a lot of small businesses that follow this channel, so it might be something that you wanna look into. If you have any questions about this printer or need to know anything about it, I am happy to answer those down in the comments. If you found this video helpful or inspiring, I would appreciate a like. Subscribe to my channel for more white toner content. I'll see you next time.